Good evening, and welcome to the show. Before we begin the game, we're going to start with a short chat with the game's writer and illustrator, Sam Jakob, since we're lucky enough to have her with us tonight. First off, thank you so much for joining us. I was so glad that this idea to do a game as a performance had your blessing. And did I manage to pronounce your last name right?
You did, yeah, Jakob.
First question. Easy softball, simple question. What is the entire story behind how the Sword of the Bastard Elf got created? The journey from a thing you did on the Something Awful forums to this thing.
Yeah, it's impressive that you can lift it so casually.
It took practice. I've actually been working out with this instead of traditional free weights.
Yeah, no, it's not good to your back, but yeah. Well, I've been reading fighting fantasy books since I was really little. They're pretty much the first books I can remember reading, and I used to make them when I was little versions of them when I was about 8 or 9 years old. At some point, I had absolutely nothing to do, so I decided to run a rip-off of a fighting fantasy book on the Something Awful forums, Sword of the Bastard Elf. And it was a really fun thread, and lots of people really got into it. So from there, it was like a matter of time till I decided to write the whole thing out properly. I did another book before that called Star Bastards, which was a really good way of testing out the systems that I was going to use later. And that did well too, and sort of paved the way for the Sort of the Bastard Elf Kickstarter. So then I sat down to write this thing. It took 2 solid years. I was sleeping about 2 hours a night for 2 years, writing and illustrating and editing it. And then for some reason, I somehow completed it and I put it out there. But the main thing about it is it has like it honors every joke made in the Something Awful thread. When it said I had like 50 pages of rules, I put in 75 pages of rules. I made the thing the size of whatever it is. See, I've got my own copy here. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the question? I basically just did it because I had the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I suspect that it might be the largest, I would call it a choose your own adventure style book. I've gone to zero effort to confirm that. Has anyone suggested the same thing to you, that you might have created actually the largest work of branching narrative fiction?
I don't think it is. I think it might be the largest game book with a solid rule system involving rolling dice involved. There is a bigger one. Some lunatic made a 1,000-page A4 Doctor Who Choose Your Own Adventure. It's the largest original work that I'm aware of.
Of course, it would be Doctor Who.
Yeah,
something ludicrously large and expansive.
Yeah, it's also very hard to get. So my book's the only one that's actually available.
Right on. Something I have suspected and assumed, but now I have a chance to actually confirm it, is, I don't know if I can throw it up into the camera here, is the Two-Fisted Fantasy logo in fact a Goatsy reference, which if you turn it upside down, it is a spitting image.
Yeah, well, I am a goon. So yes, it was designed so that when you look at the little icon that appears on web pages, it looks precisely like that.
The ring was really the giveaway for it.
Yeah, the ring is. No ring, no Goatsy, right?
Yeah, it's just 2 fists and some random asshole, not the famous asshole that we're all tragically familiar with. Another thing I was curious about, the official writing credit for the book goes to the fictional character Herman S. Skull, who was in there's sort of a world that you've created in the Sword of the Bastard Elf, and then there's another layer of fiction where you found this book, which already existed decades ago, and Herman S. Skull was the author of it. You've used your name for the illustration credits for the book, but why have you stuck to putting Skull's name more prominently on the book than your own, when you should rightfully be taking credit for writing all of this?
Well, I don't really let any... I think I want to follow through every joke I made to its conclusion. Herman Skull was originally titled as the author, so that's what I stuck with, like in the original thread. It's also really funny when I go to like sell these things in person because people ask to meet Herman Skull or assume there's several people involved with this, and there's not. You might notice also that the illustrations are actually credited to Samuel Miller, not Sam Jacob. And in future, I'll probably continue crediting them to Samuel Miller as well because that's even more confusing. I actually went to sell this book at the last Fighting Fantasy Fest, and one of the person who I spent like ages talking to the time before didn't recognize me at all and didn't actually acknowledge that I was involved in the book, and that was really funny. I like confusing people.
I heard that you have a podcast, which might be one of the ways that you confuse the general public. What is your podcast about, and where can people go to listen to it?
Well, the podcast is actually finished. It's a 25 episode podcast about being short. The episodes tend to run between 3 and 10 minutes and usually involve 2 songs and a little bit of talking. It's about nothing. It's on the Sammy.studio website though, and might be of some interest. I don't know. There's nothing about game books in there.
Okay. Well, the only other question I had was, do you have any advice for people wanting to publish things like you have in order to bring joy to this nightmarish world?
Yes, I suggest learning how to use Affinity Publisher, or I think it's called Publisher, or InDesign. Either one of those 2 things will really help you in the long run. But it's actually quite easy. Like, don't be put off. The publishers, the main ones, Create Space and Drive-Thru RPG for game books, and they're really helpful. Their processes are really simple, and they give you lots of information on what to do. So don't be put off by the apparent complexity. You just go ahead and do it.
That's inspiring in its simplicity. There's no excuse not to just start creating stuff.
That's right.
All right. Well, that brings us to the beginning of the show. Welcome to the Sword of the Bastard Elf virtual show. I will be your host, Phantom Watson, and tonight I'm joined by voice actor and comedian Aaron Beasley. Say hello, Aaron.
Hi.
This game is written and illustrated by Sammy Jacob of twofistedfantasy.com. And while it was designed to be a single-player adventure, we'll be presenting it tonight as a group game, with each player taking turns at the helm of the story's contemptible protagonist, the Bastard Elf. Those who grew up reading choose-your-own-adventure stories will be familiar with the format of this game. When it's your turn, you'll be steering the progression of a branching story that will be narrated by myself and Aaron. But in addition to deciding between options that we'll present to you, you'll also have an inventory of items that you'll be able to put to good or bastardly use. Rules: please keep your microphone muted until you are called on, and please mute it again when we're ready to narrate the consequences of your questionable decisions. Also, you're encouraged to edit how your name is displayed so that it includes your pronoun, so we don't accidentally call you something wrong, like complete idiots! If you'd rather not be called on, just edit your name and add the word pass to it to pass on your next turn. Finally, if you're currently using Zoom in gallery view, you might have a better experience in speaker view, since I'll be displaying illustrations, dice rolls, inventory lists, and other cool stuff like that in my window. To have an uninterrupted view of these things, you can right-click on my window and select Pin Video, but feel free to curate your own experience however you see fit. Here's everything else that you need to know before we start. Bastard Elf has 3 stats. They are effort, elan, and fists. Effort is like energy, and it can be spent to help overcome hassles and is replenished with food and rest. Elan, a French word meaning vigorous spirit or enthusiasm, is like health and is replenished with healing items. Fists are like strength and represent the number of dice that the elf or an enemy can roll. These dice are not added together, but rather the highest value rolled on any die is the one used. We will be beginning with 9 elan, 90 effort, and 2 fists. If any of these stats ever fall to 0, the elf is rendered completely useless and his adventure ends. Next up, the setting of the game. The game is set in a feudal human kingdom called Palaver, and I'm just going to guess at the pronunciation of all of these words. Sammy, feel free to jump in if we're mispronouncing something just egregiously. So this is going to be set in the feudal human kingdom called Palaver, and more specifically in a large province of Palaver called Nantes. The game begins in the elfin town of Elfsdale Downs, located in a large forest called Fewald, but Nance is ruled from the fortified city of Bilgeton, located on the river Bilge. When it is your turn, we may give you options to choose from to progress the story. You may have to decide how much effort to spend to overcome a hassle, and you may have the opportunity to use the items the elf has collected. If you can, please come up with a plan ahead of time so that you can tell us what it is quickly and keep the story moving. Now let's start the game. For as long as you could remember, everyone in the village called you Bastard. You were never sure if it was because you were born out of wedlock or because you are, in fact, a complete and utter bastard, but the name stuck until no one really remembered what your birth name was. Adding insult to injury, you are only a half-elf. Your mother, an apprentice whimsy flicker, a respectable trade by elf standards, took a liking to a wandering human milkman. He stayed just one night before moving on, but it was long enough for you to have inherited his rough looks and human oafishness. You are incapable of truly appreciating elfish art, enjoying elfish rations, or mastering any of the elfish skills that would lead to an elfish career. Because of your racial infirmity, you are despised for reasons above and beyond the circumstances of your birth and your unpleasant demeanor. One afternoon, you are rudely awakened from your slumber by Jeff, Mom's boyfriend, who you will never call Dad. He informs you that he's sick of you and your lack of work ethic, and that you'll never amount to anything if you don't pull yourself up by your boot buckles, and that it's time to push the half-caste baby bird out of the nest. You yell at him to shut the hells up, that he's not your real dad, and that he can't tell you what to do. And furthermore, before you can conclude your stinging repartee, Mom interjects.
Your dad?
Never that, you fume.
Is right. You've been loafing around the house for years. No job, no drive. It's my fault. You're barely a half-elf. You can't seem to live among the elves, and I never let you learn to live among the humans. I should have sent you to live with your human father when you flunked out of Grassy Watching Academy. Now it's time for you to live among your own kind. But Mom...
You whine plaintively.
I'm only 60 years old.
Jeff bellows over you.
When I was 60, I was a full-time lore warden.
You roll your eyes, but Mom nods. Sorry,
son. You must pack your things. Pack lightly, for it is a long journey to the human town of Blighton, where your father lives. Seek him out and crash on his couch if you are able. Be gone before supper.
Time is now of the essence, so you spend most of the afternoon in your room, jerking off miserably. Eventually, you're jolted into action by Jeff, that guy who lives with your mother, but who you will never, ever respect, hammering on the door.
5 minutes!
You hurriedly cram whatever's lying nearby into your pack. Select 3 objects from the starting items list. Now, who is our first player who gets to pick an object?
Mark is going to be up first.
Mark, pick one of those items, knowing full well that you have no idea what it does.
Think I'll pick the bastard sword.
Good choice. Who is our next player?
Oh, that's going to be Sammy.
What about the Fewald map?
Fewald map. Mm-hmm. And who is our next player for the third item?
Oh, we've got Soul, TV's very own.
Give me that big pole. 10-foot dungeoneering pole.
Hey, Aaron, do you happen to know Polish?
Do not.
Let's reveal what these items actually do now that we have selected them. Bastard Sword of the Elf. Okay. Outside of combat, this gives us +1 to our Elan, and we can also craft this with another sword into a neater item. The Fewald map is, I think, straightforward. It is a map of the forest area. We can examine it by going to page 68 of the book. Finally, the 10-foot dungeoneering pole, which one would assume to be a really long stick, is in fact, I think this is one of the most classic running jokes of Sammy's books. It is a very tall Polish person. To use it, I assume only in dungeoneering type settings, like in literal dungeons or caves. We can add 30 to the number of the paragraph that we're on, and then turn to that paragraph and keep reading if it makes sense. It's a very interesting item that, if I understand it correctly, we can try to invoke the 10-foot dungeoneering pole anytime we're in a dungeoneering type situation.
Any situation at all, actually.
Any situation. Oh boy. Okay, so if it's your turn, you can ask to use the dungeoneering pole to see if there's anything special that will happen when that happens. I'm guessing, what percentage of the time does the dungeoneering pole have a positive use?
It's actually surprisingly often, but it's not always positive. Occasionally you'll use him and he'll do something really bad, so be careful.
Sweet. You also find 120 leaves of valuable elfish currency. Finally, as you leave the house, you find your mother has left you a sack of elfish rations, largely indigestible to you, but better than starving. This is essentially a bunch of twigs and leaves that elves can manage to eat, though our character doesn't like to. And now you must away. Cursing your mom and that prick Jeff under your breath, you set out on your journey. If you take the most direct path to Bilgeton by striking out for the Count's Road, turn to 643. If you want to linger around your hometown and wait to see if your parents will change their minds, then turn to 433. Otherwise, you decide to scream incoherently and flee blindly into the woods, tearing at your clothes and babbling until you pass out in a pool of your various bodily fluids. Who's our next player?
P is up to let us know what our elf is gonna do.
Let's stay and whine for a bit longer.
We linger around our hometown and wait to see if our parents will change their minds. They'll change their minds once they realize you're gone once and for all. You intend to walk out of sight and then wait in some bushes for a while. Mom and even Jeff, that worthless home wreck, thrown off by a hyphen, will no doubt regret their decision and, overcome with worry, will come out looking for you. You'll make them wait, of course, before making your reappearance, and you'll demand the master bedroom as your price to return and set their consciences at ease. In the time it takes you to formulate this master plan, you hear a thud as the tower door slams shut and the click of a latch.
Click! Latch!
A quick glance over the shoulder ascertains that your parent and step-parent have already finished seeing you off and returned home, shutting the door firmly behind them. Disappointed somehow, you turn back towards your hometown. You could attempt to return home immediately, as pathetic as that seems even to yourself, a past master in the art of being pathetic, if nothing else. Turn to 918. Otherwise, you could kill some time while they reconsider by roaming around the old place. Turn to 172.
Peter, what is our bastard elf gonna do?
We're going to roam around a bit.
Now that you're outside, you realize it's been a while since you've seen much of Elfsdale Downs. You're mostly found in and around your room, and after washing out of the Grass-Watching Academy a decade or so back, you've had no real reason to roam the streets. Elves the world over live in charming stone towers amid enchanted forest glades, and although you're a half-elf, you're no exception. Elfsdale Downs is made up of a ring of tall cobblestone towers set close by each other, all surrounding a clearing in the forest, in the middle of which is a huge oak. Underneath this, nestled among the great roots which twist around the clearing, are the famed academies and schools of Elfsdale Downs, where elves go to learn their trades, whimsy flickery, lore wardening, and most of all, the course that puts Elfsdale Downs on at least a few maps, grass watching. Your mom wanted you to become a grass watcher, but you couldn't hack it, and dropped out of the Grass Watching Academy with nothing but a sizable student debt. From somewhere behind one of the towers nearby, you hear the unmistakable sounds of merriment. Some of the townspeople are no doubt engaged in the carefree frolicking that elves are known for. If you'd like to investigate...
Party! Spring break! Oh, yeah, we're banging. It's cool. Merriment. Fuck yeah.
To investigate this, turn to 1353. If you'd prefer to visit your alma mater for a trip down nostalgia lane, then turn to 749. If on second thought, you don't see any need to start exposing yourself to this place again after all this time, you can just loiter around the house until some time passes.
All right, Anita, what are we gonna do?
Just loiter around the house.
Just loiter around the house until some
Loiter,
time
yeah.
passes. What would ordinarily be an afternoon well spent following the path of least resistance is spoiled when, shortly after you begin your stakeout, garbage starts raining down from the top floor of your tower. As you look on in horror, Jeff hurls armload after armload of your worthless but potentially collectible possessions out your bedroom window. You yell up to him, calling him all the foul words you can recall and a few you made up. Jeff scowls down at you, displaying all the contempt expected of an elf who wandered into your home and thought he could pretend to be your dad, and summarily instructs you to piss off. With Jeff seemingly serious about permanently moving you out, your plans are ruined. There's no longer any point hanging around Elfsdale Downs. As your useless property rains down from above, you must decide, will you leave town via the road to Bilgeton, or, after due consideration of the bleakness of your situation, will you freak out and flee into the forest?
All right, well, Xena, what are we doing?
I'm going to freak out and flee into the forest.
That's a really popular choice. Your trials and tribulations have driven you mad with rage and despair. You plunge heedlessly into the forest, screaming and babbling inarticulately, for what seems like hours until you run out of steam and collapse to the ground in a heaving fetal ball of tears, snot, and blood from your numerous scrapes. Lose 5 effort. You eventually get a hold of yourself, and after unscrewing yourself from the forest floor, you examine your surroundings. They appear to be the mating grounds of a giant rutting forest bat.
Oh yeah. What the fuck are you doing here? You get the fuck out of here.
He's not pleased with your inadvertent cock blocking. We now have our first hassle to overcome. To overcome a hassle, the elf's die roll plus the effort he spends must be greater than the hassle's die roll plus its difficulty, although hassles without a fist rating don't roll any dice. This particular hassle has a difficulty of 9. Some hassles give the elf the option to run away or otherwise avoid fighting, which is sometimes a wise, if cowardly move when the alternative is spending too much of his limited effort. Winning a hassle usually conveys a reward, but losing will rarely have game-ending consequences. It's very important to preserve your effort, as it can be depleted quickly and replenishes slowly. Often it's best to weasel out of dealing with hassles rather than tackling them head-on, even if it means using an item or taking a beating. And if the bastard elf dies before 2 hours are up, we'll just have him lose 1 of his 3 lives and rewind the story back so we can keep going. This hassle also has a toughness of 2. To defeat a hassle, the elf must win against it in the same number of rounds as its toughness rating. So who's up?
Robin, how are we taking on this giant forest bat? Are we trying to fight it, or what's up?
More notes. If you win, you are compelled to steal the sweet belt that he's wearing. If you lose, he's going to give you a good hard kicking before leaving. How much effort do we go to in order to try to beat our giant bat? We will need to spend at least 5 effort for victory to be possible against it, and 15 effort to guarantee a victory. Or you can go to no effort at all and just take a beating.
So, Robin, you're up. What do you think the elf should do? How much effort should the elf put in, if any? Take the beating?
Oh, I'm seeing Robin in chat, and she's saying 15. Keep in mind that there are 2 rounds that you'll have to beat it in. Unfortunately, I forgot to mention this, the effort that you spend is capped at your current Elan rating, so we can only spend a maximum of 9. Oh, I entered it. That's right. I did enter a fist rating for the bat instead of its toughness rating. Thank you. And 9 effort will guarantee success. So, same difference. In the first round, we win, spending 9 effort. Robin, do you also want to spend 9 effort in the second round against it, or be more conservative? Spend another 9? Okay. Looks like we're going to get that belt. We have defeated it, and we have reduced our effort to 72. So we get the sweet belt that he's wearing. We're going to
Not
add
my
it to,
belt! No!
and let's check real quick what that sweet belt actually does. It gives us +1 fists, which is pretty significant. That's going to give us a major advantage in our die rolls. But we're going to keep this extra die aside, and if it ever comes up as a 1, the belt slips off and we lose it forever. So we're going to say the first fist die is our sweet belt die, and it's going to run the risk of losing it whenever we're in a hassle. Now that that's settled, it asks, did you pack the Feewald map? If so, turn to 189. You consult the map, which you sensibly packed before you left home. Bilchin is a few days' walk away, even if you take the most direct route. But if you go around the cave and cut east through the forest for a few hours, you'll find a human town called Brunenfeld, from which you can probably arrange transport. On the other hand, your mother always warned you about humans, especially the Hicks in this neck of the woods. If you'd prefer not to deal with humanity until you absolutely have to, you can set out for the main road, cutting through something called the Glade of Pixies. Turn to 453 to approach the human town, or 520 to chance the Glade of Pixies. If, despite knowing the way you want to go, you still want to poke around in the bat's lair, then turn to 768.
All right, Aaron Silvers. What is our elf gonna do?
Let's poke around in that bat's cave. Let's find some more stuff.
Hell yeah.
One of my favorite illustrations in the game, I have to say. Never one to let an opportunity for petty bullying to go to waste, you set about ritually humiliating your fallen opponent. As he cowers and marinates in his shame, you use his guano to daub many a penis and titty on his face and torso. This takes a while, but makes you feel like a real big man. You gain 5 effort. It's only when you're done...
Take it. Fuck you, Jeff.
It's only when you're done screaming in his ears that you realize you may have gone too far. You've ruined his super sensitive bat hearing, and you were eventually hoping to shake some directions out of him. Still, all is not lost. Since you came a-knocking while his lair was a-rocking, you reason he's got a female accomplice nearby you can question. Following the overpowering smell of guano and polo for Batman, you quickly find his cave and descend into the darkness. Your half-elf eyes quickly adjust, and you make out a large bed and its occupant, a horrifying, gargantuan bat monster, much like its mate, 7 feet tall with a cruel maw lined with razor-sharp fangs, a coquettish glitter in his eye and a flirty note in her inhuman ultrasonic shriek indicates that she's taken with your extremely handsome belt and your manly / elfly / batly odor of fresh guano. One thing very quickly leads to another, and as you puff on a post-coital cigarette, the female bat clicks and chirps out several possible directions to Bilgeton, as if she wanted you to get out or something. Will you take her directions and continue with your quest? Turn to 1507. Or do you wish to stay here with the only woman that has ever loved you, physically or otherwise?
Thank you. What are we gonna do?
Take her directions.
Great.
Disdaining to make an honest elf of yourself or an honest bat out of her, you nobly scoop up all your things and sneak out of the cave as soon as your lover turns her back on you, making sure to scoop up the full harness of steel plate and knightly shield you saw in the previous page's illustration. The full harness of steel plate sounds like a pretty badass and useful thing to have. However, this suit of armor was presumably not made for an elf, not made for someone your size, and also suits of armor like that typically need assistance to get into them. Consequently, this is listed as junk, and we can't actually put it on. However, at some point in the future, we might be able to combine it with something into an actually useful item. The knightly shield, however, is definitely useful and has an immediate purpose. We can either wear it on our arms, which prevents us from wielding a weapon, or we can have it on our back. When we have this at all, anything that we do that costs effort will cost 1 extra effort. And when it is equipped in our arm, whenever we're injured, we can roll a die, and on a 4 or higher, we'll disregard the injury. If we wear it on our back, we can still wield a weapon, but the injury-saving mechanic only applies for injuries that are incurred fleeing from combat, which we might be doing a lot of. So when it is your turn, you have the option to ditch this heavy-ass shield that is making all effort cost more effort, or put it on your arm, or put it on your back. Following the Bat Lady's directions, you could make your way back to the road to Bilgeton by cutting south through the forest via the Glade of Pixies. Turn to 520 if you want to do this. If you'd rather not encounter pixies, you could avoid them by ignoring the road and instead traversing the Big Rock Goblin Mountains in the east. Turn to 453 to give this a shot.
All right, Sammy, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Let's go to the Glade of Pixies. And can we equip the shield on our back?
Absolutely. There's a question in the chat. How does the effort tax affect our spins in hassles? Can we only spend 8, or does it cost 10 to use 9? My interpretation. Yeah, okay. So whenever we spend effort, we'll just lose 1 extra effort.
Yeah, and every time the book tells you lose effort, you lose 1 extra, just every time.
Oh, even if you're just losing effort through external means, it's not just when you spend. Ouch. Okay, so we are going to equip the shield on our back. And we're going to the Glade of Pixies?
Yep.
Okay. You set off towards the road to Bilgeton via the Glade of Pixies. A chill of foreboding sweeps over you. Pixies are the most deceitful, underhanded, and mean-spirited creatures in the whole bestiary, yourself included. Then again, that bestiary was written by a dwarf, and they're a pretty racist bunch on the whole. It's a long trek, and it gets dark early this deep into the forest. As the sun goes down and total darkness sets in, you notice the air is beginning to smell rancid, like a wet fart. The ground is becoming soft and squelchy underfoot. You also have a feeling that you're being watched, as if dozens of pairs of eyes are following your every move. It's probably just the numerous varieties of fist-sized poisonous and stinging insects that infest the swamp at night and feast on the flesh of half-elves. But it could easily be something much worse. In short, the forest has become a swamp, and you're getting paranoid. Since this is a paragraph break, who's our next player?
That would be Soul, TV's very own.
Soul, you at this point have the option to use an item. You can change something about how we're wearing the knightly shield or carrying it at all. Also, we're down a little bit of effort, and we do have elfin rations, which are technically food. Here are the things you can do with items. You can do something different with a shield. You can eat the rations, and you also have the option to check out the Feewald map.
I'm going to use the pole.
Use the pole. Okay.
I don't like the swamp. I don't like it one bit.
Whether through skill, quick thinking, or blind luck, you've managed to roll right through the elf ambush without them seeing you coming. It sounds like that is not an opportunity for the 10-foot dungeoneering pole to help us out. After some hours of unpleasant trudging in the dark, during which time every single item you own gets covered in swamp juice, you begin to suspect that the pixies inhabit a glade in much the same way that the cramped and crumbling heap you grew up in was an enchanted tower. Your suspicions are confirmed when you come to the end of the woodland track that was supposed to lead to the Glade of Pixies. A rotting tree stump sits in the middle of a soggy clearing. Perched atop the stump is a small bottle with a label reading, "Drink me."
Drink me!
Oh, you get Corona. Topical. There is a thick fog of marsh gas obscuring the foliage around the clearing, but you can make out movement and hear some snippets of inane banter about house prices.
We can't afford that. The market. Gentrification. Oh.
You're still being watched, probably by pixies. Their town must be around here someplace, though you doubt you'll find it without the pixies' permission. If you throw dignity to the wind, get down on your belly in that swamp, and appeal to the pixies' benevolence and hospitality toward a traveler in need, turn to 163. If you do what the pixies evidently expect of you and drink the potion that was painfully, obviously left there for you, turn to 834. If you're sick of playing pixie games and you think you have what it takes to beat a bunch of swamp peasants less than half your size, turn to 1509. If you'd rather take the unbelievably dangerous option of trying to make your way through the dark swamp at night, then turn to 1111.
I think it is still Saul TV's very own turn. So, yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, we're prostrating. I don't want to drink that.
Throw dignity to the wind, get down on your belly in the swamp, and appeal to the pixies' benevolence and hospitality toward a traveler in need. Choosing to swallow your pride rather than that suspicious potion, you get down on your knees and beg for mercy. You cringe and simper and explain that all you want is somewhere warm and dry to spend the night. This elicits no response from the notoriously flint-hearted pixies, aside from some high-pitched tittering at the miserable display you're making of yourself.
This guy sucks.
After you've carried on for entirely too long, a voice calls out from the edge of the clearing.
It's a doors of perception thing, isn't it? You big people can't see the magical glade of the pixies unless you're into mental altered state.
You stare blankly in the general direction from which the voice is coming.
Cripes! Drink the fucking potion already. You'll be able to find the place.
If the promise of a place to crash is irresistible, you can chug the potion and turn to 834. Otherwise, you can continue to beg and carry on in an increasingly demeaning fashion by turning to 243.
All right. P is up.
The potion, I don't think beg and
I heard drink the potion. Despite your total inability to fit in, or maybe because of it, you've always been susceptible to peer pressure. You know it's a terrible idea, but yet you walk over to the leering stump, pick up the potion, and take a swig. You instantly begin to regret your decision. You've imbibed a potion. While in most of your fantasy books and the likes, this is usually a good idea. In the land of nonce, it's quite the opposite. Potions are nothing more than rancid herbs, fungi, and critter parts dunked in the medieval equivalent of bathtub moonshine. Chances are you've just poured something horrible into your face. You suffer -1 elan from the alcohol poisoning until you can rest, and must roll on the potion effects table. The potion effects table has us roll 2 dice. Those 2 dice end up 3 and 1 for a total of 4. Potion effects table says, the potion causes hallucinations. Oh no. Your long-dead grandma is crawling up your leg with a knife between her teeth, shrieking something about you never visiting.
Visit me more often!
We must now fight Grandma, who has a difficulty of 12, which is significant. Should you fail to overcome this apparition, you must add Grandma to your inventory. And she has effects on the game. You must overcome Grandma before dealing with anything else on this page. Family comes first. Whose turn is it next?
It'll be Dumb Sex Parrot.
Dumb Sex Parrot. You have to decide how much effort to spend. 7 is necessary for victory to be possible at all.
Dumb Sex Parrot, are you there?
I do have muscle.
Yes, sorry.
You're good.
How much effort do we have in all?
77.
Then go for 8.
Oh, man. Odds are not in our favor. All right, rolling. We got a 5. Perfect. We managed to defeat Grandma. That is the lowest die roll that we could have gotten and still defeated Grandma. We beat her by just a hair.
You don't visit, you didn't attend my funeral. Now you've murdered me in your hallucination. You're terrible.
So returning to the story, we managed to defeat our hallucination of a grandma. Aside from the usual horrors that occur when you drink a potion, nothing much happens for a while. You're beginning to feel like you got burned on this one when suddenly the forest explodes in a cacophony of lights, shapes, and patterns. A rainbow road unfurls itself before you as cheerful, high-pitched voices call you from the dark. A vision coalesces in front of the road before you. A tiny man in a swirl of colorful rags, a dancing explosion of jollity and chuckles.
Come this way,
he sings.
Come to the glade. There's wonderful treasure in store for you this way.
He dances down the rainbow road as he leaves Tinkle in Harmony behind him. As the leaves tinkle in harmony behind him. If you follow, then turn to 95. If you'd rather not, turn to 794.
Peter, what are we doing? Are we following this weird pixie?
Yeah, let's follow him.
Hell yeah.
You follow the increasingly incoherent road, accompanied by a swarm of little pixies, until you arrive at the dearest tiny town, rows of charming wee houses for the delightful little men. Not everyone there is small, though. You see a group consisting of a couple of humans and a dwarf near the biggest gold nugget you have ever seen. They're merrily carving away at it with magical glowing tools, sparks shooting out like fireworks as they strike the rock. And as they go, they're stuffing piles of the treasure into their pockets.
Welcome to the Glade of Pixies,
says your host, the colorfully garbed pixie who you'd forgotten about as soon as your eyes fix on the treasure.
We extend our warmest hospitality to you before you avail yourself of our amenities.
He continues, gesturing to a building the size of a barn on the other side of the town, which at this distance looks like the most luxurious inn you've ever seen.
Perhaps you'd like to join your fellow large folk and help yourself to some free gold before it's all gone.
Your drug-addled brain reasons that this offer seems too good to be true. So it must be. If you can't wait to start stuffing your backpack with pure strain gold, then turn to 1085. If you'd rather avail yourself of the amenities first, then turn to 1363.
All right, Anita is up. Anita, what are we doing?
Yeah, he's gonna dig the gold.
Approaching the gold nugget, a gleaming gold boulder, tall enough that you can barely see over it and several times wider, you kneel down and take up a magical pick presented to you by your host. Add the magical pick to your adventure scroll.
Dig only at the center, dear guest. The top and bottom and sides are common rock and aren't worth anything. Now work hard. Your gold haul will buy you luxurious stay at the Lodge of Travelers,
he says, gesturing at the fabulous inn you saw just previously. Noticing that the boulder is already substantially hollowed out by the elf man and dwarf who are working feverishly and stuffing their pouches to bursting, you crawl into the nugget alongside them and get to digging. We have a hassle just called striking gold. You may decide the difficulty each round. If you overcome that level, you gain that amount of gold. So for the next player, the choice is, what do we set the difficulty to? And that determines how much gold we can possibly get out of it. And also, do we spend any effort? And we have the option to not spend any effort.
All right, Xena, you're up.
Okay, so sorry, just to clarify, I get to set the difficulty and the effort?
Setting the difficulty is essentially like, how much gold do you want to dig for?
The most amount. I want a lot of gold.
All of it. Okay, well, how much effort do you want to go to, though? You can go to no effort and still succeed.
So I guess effort, I'll do 5.
Okay. It is actually guaranteed that you would win if you spend 5 effort and the difficulty is at 5.
Well, yay.
Do you want to increase the difficulty anymore or keep the difficulty just at 5?
No, let's just leave it there.
Okay, 5 efforts for 5 gold, and you win.
Yay.
A tinge of light appears in the swamp air by the time you've worn yourself out digging at the nugget. By now, the potion's finally beginning to wear off, and you're starting to feel cold, tired, and very sore. The pick doesn't seem quite so magical and more like a regular pick, and you're beginning to wonder about your fellow winners who don't seem all that excited about their haul. You hear a whistle blow, and the pixie who was herding around you earlier reappears.
This concludes your magical shift. Evening. Let us now proceed to the inn, where all your wants and needs will be provided.
You trudge, exhausted after the others. The town doesn't seem so delightful in the gray pre-dawn light, more a miserable slum made up of identical grim little houses. The barn-sized inn is beginning to look a lot more like a regular barn, too, and not a particularly nice one either. What little paint is still on it is peeling rapidly in the humid, swampy atmosphere of this ugly glade. Outside the inn, the garish pixie, suddenly exactly the kind of repulsive sprite you remember pixies being, checks the amount of gold you picked up. As you empty it out of your pockets and backpack, you notice it looks just like regular old granite, though some of the chunks have a gold side, as though it was painted on. If you gained 30 or more gold, then turned to 1748, we did not. If you dug less than 30, then turned to 1067. Whose turn is it next? Just in case this person wants to do anything with our items.
It will be Robin's turn.
Robin, are you interested in doing anything with our items? The choices are doing something different with the shield, eating rations, and checking a map.
Let's eat rations, Robin says.
So the elfin rations are interesting. We actually have to roll to see what happens. You've never liked elfin rations. They just taste like leaves to you. So it's with a certain amount of reluctance that you go rummaging around in your pack for the unsatisfying snack, feeling the crinkling of the dried leaves used to either wrap or form the outer portion of the meal. You're never sure which. You pull it out of the bag and commence to pick at it. It's only then that you notice something's weird about this one. It's no elfin ration at all. Your mother, knowing your dietary preferences, has put a special surprise in there for you. You brush away the leaves to reveal a slab of unevenly cooked meat of unknown provenance. Your mom is no better with human food than you are with the elfin stuff, but it warms your heart to know she still cares about you, even if she took that darn home-wrecking Jeff's side and let him kick you out of the home. Remove the elfin ration.
Sucks!
Fucking Jeff! Remove the elfin ration from your adventure scroll and add meat, and return to the page from which you came. So we now have an even better food item. Instead of rations, we now have meat, which will restore 10 effort, which we kind of need. Do you want to eat the meat? We eat the meat, and we restore 10 effort. The others enter the barn. The pixie then inspects your pile with a look of pure scorn. He shakes his head in annoyance.
Are we supposed to get the supermarket hollowed out if this is the best you can do? Not even worth the price of the potion we wasted on your lazy backside. Get the hells out of our glade, or we'll beat the snot out of you.
He gestures with his stick, pointing down a track leading into the forest to the east. Now that you think about it, it was odd that the huge gold nugget had a sign out in front saying, "Coming soon, your local monopix." It seems that the pixies have tricked you into doing some construction work for them. It's like something that horrible stepfather of yours would do, though possibly without the hallucinogenic drugs and threats. You feel like you've been ripped off, but if you don't like your odds of taking on a town full of pixies, you can leave quietly without causing any additional problems by turning to 914. If you'd rather make a scene, then turn to 1025.
Okay, Aaron Silvers, what are we doing? We leaving peacefully, or are we fucking shit up?
Yeah, we're gonna make a scene.
Fuck yeah, we are. We're that fucking elf.
It seems like the obvious choice. You've had an awful night, which came hot on the heels of an awful day, and this rudeness is the final straw. Tears running down your cheeks, you boot the pixie hard into a nearby house, smashing him through the front facade of the building hard enough to cause it to topple and partially block the cramped lane with rubble. Regrettably, the pre-dawn is when most pixies get up to begin their commutes to whatever wretched mischief they have planned for the day, and the resultant traffic jam, as carts are forced to back up due to your actions, drives them into a towering rage. Dozens of pixies leap from their tiny little carts, and others rush out of their houses to deal with the source of their frustrations. We now have a multiple hassle against furious pixies and angry pixies. Who's our next player?
Spanky. We gotta give some effort. What are we doing?
Let's give maximum effort.
Maximum effort!
Hell yeah.
So it is going to take at least 4 rounds to defeat both of these hassles, because each of them has a toughness of 2. Maximum effort is going to be 8, which our odds are pretty good, spending 8 effort for each of these rounds. So our first fight against Furious Pixies turns out good. We win our first round against the Furious Pixies, and maximum effort for every round.
Spanky.
We'll do that again.
All right, and we have defeated the first of these hassles, the Furious Pixies. Next up, Angry Pixies, same thing, maximum effort, both rounds.
Yep, keep going.
We win. However, the first die that we roll ends up a 1, so we unfortunately have just lost our sweet belt. One more, and we have defeated all the pixies. Our effort has been reduced.
My fucking belt. I love that thing. Ugh, how will I remember banging that sweet bat? Oh well.
Our effort has been reduced further to 39 because of the shield. Your sanity, already hanging by a thread thanks to the travails of the day and the effects of the potion, finally snaps under the ill treatment you've received from these pixies. As the few remaining survivors flee from your wrath, you turn it on their town, screaming and crying as you completely wreck up the joint. Pixie houses, despite being made of stone, are hastily constructed using indentured labor and aren't up to code at all. Their paper-thin walls are no match for your boots and fists, and by the time the sun has risen, you've thoroughly and permanently lowered the property prices of every piece of real estate in the glade. Your unrestrained savagery has netted you a fine collection of pixie bits, which you may add to your adventure scroll. This is literally pixie body parts, so gross. You also find 5 Bilgeton guilders in hard currency on the corpses of your enemies. Add this to your adventure scroll. Unfortunately, a fire you started mid-rampage spreads to the Lodge of Travelers before you get a chance to investigate it, and being full of dry hay and flammable potions, it explodes spectacularly. Your curiosity remains unslaked, but this meaningless destruction is all very cathartic. Restore 5 effort. Starting to come down hard from the potion, you decide it's time to get out of this depressing pixie slum. If you'd like to head back more or less the way you came, through the swamps to the south, then turn to 426. If you'd prefer to follow a thin track leaving the glade to the east, then turn to 914.
All right, Sammy, you are up. What are we gonna do?
Let's go to the road to the south.
You head south, leaving the devastated glade of the pixies behind. You find yourself trekking through the same swamp you passed through last night, though in the light of day the passage is far less treacherous, even if it's every bit as disgusting. Very soon, the road to Bilgeton can be glimpsed through the trees. Like most fey folk, pixies prefer to build their dens near human infrastructure. There's still a fair bit of marsh and thick woodland between you and it, and you spend the rest of the early morning clawing your way through the thick foliage and muddy terrain. After a thoroughly exhausting slog, you finally stumble out of the woods and back into the cobbled Count's Road to Bilgeton. Your filthy, bedraggled appearance and wild eyes belie the fact that you've only been on a quest for less than a day. Next time, you promise yourself, you'll just take the road in the first place. You follow the road until the sun is high overhead. It beats slogging through the wilderness, but Bilchin is still at least 3 days hike away by road, and you're already getting blisters. Lost in such thoughts, you only notice the group camped out alongside the highway when you're almost passing by them. It's some human nobility out for a picnic by the looks. Like all nobility, they're pretty self-absorbed, so you haven't been spotted yet. This is your chance to pick up some supplies and maybe hitch a ride, if you're careful. They have several armed guards with them, so annoying the humans could be hazardous. If you think you have little to fear from these people, you could approach them directly for a conversation. Or would you prefer to skulk in the undergrowth and plot some kind of mischief against these travelers? Alternatively, if you know trouble when you smell it, you can just trudge on by and leave these poor bastards alone.
This will be P.
Let's plot some mischief.
Plot some mischief. You creep into the undergrowth and have a good skulk. Since you're not all that good at camouflage or hiding or sitting still or not yelling when the forest insects bite you, you're spotted by the noble's guards. They don't come after you, but they keep looking in your direction, and you're pretty sure they'll spring into action if you try to launch any kind of scheme. You squat in the undergrowth for long enough that it'd feel real awkward to just mosey on over and introduce yourself, even if you were inclined to go chat with potentially dangerous humans. You just sit there and practice your skulk while you watch the nobles playing cards. Eventually, one of the guards gets sufficiently curious about your reasons for loitering about in the bushes and yells at you in his crude human tongue.
Oi!
He starts striding briskly toward you from across the clearing. You guess that it's time to stop crouching. If you want to run for it, turn to 1207. If you don't like your chances of getting away from this guy despite having a huge head start on him and his wearing at least a moderately heavy armor, then turn to 630 to see what happens. So our choices are running or staying put. Who's our next player?
And that would go to Peter. Peter, you're up.
I think it's been a while since we've used our pole. Can he help?
Quite possibly. So we're on a 193, so we'd be turning to 223 and seeing if there's anything that seems to make sense, seems to reference him. 223 begins, there's more than money at stake here. You pay the 5 guilders. That sounds like...
All right, let's run away.
You wisely decide to get away from anyone who yells "oi" at you, especially if they're wearing armor and carrying a huge halberd. Although you should have been able to get away easily, you're all stiff from all that crouching, and you trip over a branch as you awkwardly waddle away, thereby squandering your head start. By the time you're up and ready to make your escape, the guard is almost on top of you. Escaping from the guard is our next hassle. We have the option to either try to escape. This will be a difficulty of 7 with a fists of 1. So we'll have to probably put a little bit of effort into it. We also have the option to just give up. Who's up next?
It'll be Anita.
Can you run by the options again for me?
We have the options to either continue trying to escape, which will probably take effort, or just give up.
I just give up.
Good move. You get tangled up in a bush, and the guard easily catches up with you.
Oi!
He reiterates, as he comes within easy striking range of his cruel-looking halberd.
I saw what you did.
He bends over in front of you and picks up a handful of leaves, depositing them in your hands.
Don't litter. Last warning.
You begin to protest, but the guard has already turned away. Only then do you realize that at some point during your skulking, your bag had been pulled open by one of the twigs on the bush you were ineffectually hiding in, and all of your elfin currency had fallen out. Sheepishly repacking your cash, you notice that you're missing some of your more valuable leaves and twigs. Roll a die and multiply the outcome by 5. This is how many leaves have been lost. And multiply 5 by 5, we've lost 25 leaves, which we're told is actual currency used by the elves. and also eaten by the elves, but the currency leaves and the food leaves are different, I think. Your embarrassed gratitude turns to rage as you realize that the stories about human corruption are right. They're not to be trusted. Fuming at the excessive cost of this lesson in human nature, you extricate yourself from the foliage and continue on your way down the road. I gotta say, Sammy, thanks for all these sweet vocab words you throw in here. It makes me feel super smart when I read it out loud. All these words that I don't actually use in real life. It's a treat. Most fantasy adventures involve hours, days, or weeks of just walking from A to B, and the Sword of the Bastard Elf is no different. Without a mount of some kind, the road to Bilchin is kind of long and uninteresting. You generally slog along the paved highway, getting out of the way for the occasional cart that refuses to pick you up, and sometimes stopping for a rest along the side of the road where you eat whatever unsatisfying junk is in your backpack and wish harm on Jeff for sending you on this long, arduous, and boring trek when you could be inside, not walking anywhere or eating handfuls of seeds out of a rucksack.
Fucking Jeff! Fucking
Jeff! This is all a long way of saying time passes, which it does, and another late evening finds you still on the road. Breaking the monotony somewhat is an odd smell, sickly sweet like rotten flesh, which is wafting down a weedy and overgrown dirt path which runs off to the north through a break in the tree line. Set in the ground near this junction is an ancient, weathered marker stone which reads, Graveyard of Kings. Just beyond this stands a signpost of decidedly more recent vintage, with a notice written on parchment nailed to it. Pilgrimage site closed on account of lich infestation. I have pledged my sword to rid the realm of this fiend no later than the summer of the year of our king. And then there's a bunch of Roman numerals I'm not even going to try to decipher. It's signed by a Sir Tedbald and bears a grisly wax seal depicting a decapitated elf head. You're not sure you ever want to meet the guy if that's his trademark. Anyhow, if a nighttime romp in a graveyard sounds like fun, you can make your way up the path by turning to 1007. If you'd rather just continue your journey without risking an encounter with a lich, then turn to 1802.
All right, Xena is up. What is our elf gonna do?
Oh man, I was really hoping it's my turn because I'm totally going to that graveyard.
There is a warning sign that says there's a lich there.
Yeah, but it's a spooky graveyard. I mean, why not just see what happens? Take the road less traveled.
What's the point of playing games if you're going to be super careful?
Right.
You wander on 1007. You wander up the path for a half an hour, during which time the weeds grow thicker and the smell of rotting flesh stronger. No one's come this way for at least a couple of years. You soon find out why when you find yourself approaching a couple of shamblers standing in the path, lit up in the baleful moonlight. These undead beasties are grotesque parodies of the living, who exist only to devour flesh, spread their vile curse of undeath, and critique consumerism. The shamblers...
brains. Monopolies are bad for the economy.
There. The shamblers, spotting a living humanoid, groan and shamble, of course, in your direction, arms outstretched before them as they advance. Treat this as a multiple hassle. We now have a hassle against a shambling shambler and a groaning shambler. Shamblers might be slow, but they can easily back a panicking opponent into a corner. Each time you lose a round against either of these, to lose one elan for the remainder of this page. If you win, then you manage to bash your way through and continue on to the graveyard. If you lose, then roll 2 dice and add them up. If the total is lower than your current elan, then turn to 1576. If it's equal or higher, turn to 1047. So it looks like there is no option to weasel out of this, and we do have to engage in this hassle. The question, of course, is how much effort do we go to?
I think that Aaron Silvers will be up for this one.
And each has a toughness of 2, so there are at least 4 rounds that we will have to beat them in.
So how much effort are we sitting at?
44 effort.
Woof.
It's not a lot. And we're still carrying that shield, so we're going to be losing additional effort every time that we spend it.
Let's not do max. Can we do what would be max effort?
Okay, max effort is going to be 9.
And then we have 4 rounds to go?
Yes, we have to beat them 4 times to overcome this.
Let's start with 7.
You said 7? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So 7 is going to make it pretty likely that we'll win. Unfortunately, we rolled a 2, and the Shambling Shambler rolled a 5. Despite our efforts, we came close to beating it, but we did not. Now, Sammy might weigh in on this. Since this is a multiple hassle, and we lost to 1, so the second one has a chance of ambushing us. Does this mean that we lose 2 Elan? Or just
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
You just take all the consequences of losing against both opponents.
So our Elan is temporarily knocked down to 8, and we've not yet beaten them. Do you also want to spend 7 efforts in this next round? 7 almost did it last time.
Yeah, let's stick with 7.
It in the first of 4 rounds. How much effort in this next round?
Let's stick with 7, if we could.
All right, 7 effort. We've beaten it again. So one of the Shamblers is down. The only one left is the Groaning Shambler. We have 23 effort remaining. Oh, actually, we have 21 because of the shield.
The shield. Let's do 5 and hope for the best.
Okay. 5 effort. We roll. That did it. 7 versus 5.
Nice.
And we have 15 effort remaining.
I'm sticking with 5.
5 effort. That did it. All right. We have overcome these Shamblers. Our effort has been reduced to 9. Xena's saying, maybe the graveyard wasn't worth it. Hopefully we can recover. We will see what the consequences of your decision are going to be. You bash, slash, and or hack your way through the Shamblers, returning them to the truly dead once again. Since they're just zombies, they don't have anything of value on them, but you can extract some zombie teeth if you're feeling brave and not too squeamish. Add 50 zombie teeth to the cache section of your adventure scroll. Gross. With that concluded, you move on and soon arrive at your destination, the Graveyard of Kings. The moon hangs balefully in the sky, illuminating the desolate sight. A low stone wall surrounding a small field littered with fallen headstones, broken steel and black pits, which you're nearly certain are excavated graves. Worryingly, there are way more holes than could possibly have been occupied by just those 2 Shamblers. Most importantly, the moon reflects off a tall stone mound in the middle of the cemetery. It appears to be the only unspoiled site here, so if you had to guess, this would be where the Lich would be located. A black hole in the front of this heap provides access to the barrow should you be brave or bored enough to try your luck in there. Despite your growing dread, you've walked and fought too hard to simply turn back now. If you want to investigate the barrow, then you enter the forbidding hole and descend via a narrow staircase into the heart of the crypt. Turn to 471. If you'd prefer to occupy yourself by fossicking around in the graves, which are at least nearer to the surface, then turn to 1376.
All right, Spanky is up.
So I'm going to look around the graveyard.
You're going to dick around in the graveyard? Of course you start looting the graves. Why not? As you might expect from a place called the Graveyard of Kings, it's been thoroughly looted already by greedy treasure hunters over the years. What little was left with the dead was taken along with the corpses when they dug their way out of the ground. As a result, your hopping from grave to grave is fruitless. You're about to give up when, at the bottom of the very last grave you inspect, you find a beautiful steel mace with a gold wire wrapped haft lying at the bottom of the hole. Though partially covered with dirt, the steel flanges of the mace head shine supernaturally with something more than the reflected light of the moon, and the glittering handle seems to call for you to pick it up. Honestly, it's kind of weird that it's been left here. If you're carrying the confessor's shovel, blah blah blah, we are not. Otherwise, you have a choice. Will you take the mace? Turn to 1492. If you choose not to pick up the mace, or if a bossy tool isn't letting you, you leave it where it is and resolve to find something less overtly suspicious inside the barrow. You make your way in through the forbidding entrance and down a long and narrow staircase into the heart of the crypt below, turning to 471.
Okay, Sammy, you are up. What is this elf doing?
Oh no.
I'd like the mace, please.
Yielding to temptation, you pick up the mace. Hoisting it free of the dirt, you find it surprisingly light and extremely well balanced. It's also surprisingly clean and free of corrosion, despite having lain in a pit for God knows how long. In fact, it feels like it might be magical, a feeling which is confirmed when the mace explicitly tells you to head into the barrow, promising brave deeds and a glorious death. While you don't feel particularly brave or suicidal, you're not able to overcome the suggestive power of the mace, and your grip tightens on its hilt. It points itself toward the dark entrance of the barrow, bragging directly into your brain as you follow along behind it. You've picked up the Crowing Club. Add this to your adventure scroll as equipment, removing any other weapon you have equipped. We have no other weapon, so it makes no difference. And let's check and see what the effects of the Crowing Club are real quick. +2 Elan in the first round of combat only. This allows us to spend more effort than usual. Undead hassles have -2 difficulty, and it can't be discarded until the text says so. The mace begins to glow as you enter the barrow, softly but still brightly enough to see a few feet ahead of you. This is fortunate because you run into a trio of skeletons hanging out in the hallway at the bottom of the stairs. Before you can even cower or beg for mercy, the mace almost swings itself at the unlucky undead.
I'm a skeleton! This is a hassle! Let's go!
Nice. Our next hassle is the Skeletrio. If you defeat the fragile adversaries, then turn to 1781. If not, then turn to 1268.
All right.
This hassle has a difficulty of 11.
P is up to determine how we battle these folk.
Can you go over the options again?
There are no options. We have to fight these guys. Sometimes there's an option to just weasel out and not fight, but this time the mace is compelling us to fight the Skeletrio. We have 9 effort. At 11 difficulty, we would have to spend 6 effort for it to be possible to win against this. Our choices now are, you can actually choose to be beaten up by the Skeletrio, which would allow us to not spend any effort on this. Or we can spend a significant amount of the effort that actually most of the effort that we still have, and fight them.
Okay, let's stick with 7. Let's try it.
Okay, you want to spend 7 effort, which would reduce us to 1 effort remaining to fight this Skeletrio?
Is this either way?
Not necessarily. If they beat us up, it might be relatively inconsequential to the story. Do you still want to fight them, or?
Let's go for a fight. I feel the club compels us to kill those things again.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, way to role play into it.
Okay, so minimum effort to succeed is 6. Effort to guarantee a success is 11. We're going with 7 effort. Actually, that is the maximum amount that we can spend, because any more would reduce us to 0, which would kill us. So let's roll. If we fail this roll, then there's nothing we could do, and they beat us up. So we rolled a 2, which does not overcome the hassle's difficulty, unfortunately.
Yeah, don't fuck with us. We'll beat your ass. Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, I gotta go.
The skeletons give you one hell of a kicking, or at least as much as their muscleless legs will allow. Lose 5 effort. So, if we did not have the shield, this would definitely kill the bastard elf, because it would reduce his efforts below 1. However, the shield allows us to roll a die, and it might save us from this injury if we roll a 4 or higher. So it all comes down to this die roll. This has to come up a 4 or higher for the shield to save us from these injuries. If it rolls a 3, a 2, or a 1, these skeletons beat us up to actually kill us, and our adventure ends here. So, fingers crossed. Oh, a 5! Yeah! And our shield saves us. It's a good thing it was equipped by Sammy. Who knows what she's doing? Skeletons give you one hell of a kicking, though it did not injure us because of the shield, before dragging you somewhere deeper into the burrow and hurling you into a bone heap. You lie still in the huge pile of bones for a while until the skeletons jitter away. You guess they're satisfied that you're probably dead. The bruises they gave you hurt badly enough as you painfully rise to your feet that you almost wish they were right. If you had the Crowing Club, then the mace has given up the ghost. After that shameful defeat, it no longer has a damn thing to boast about and has become introspective and withdrawn. While it no longer glows, it also no longer talks to you or sticks to your hand. The curse has been removed. You can finally unequip it if you want. You stagger out of the room containing the bone pile and find that you're back in the hallway. You can sense fresh air coming from your right, which means that's probably the way you came in. If you'd like to head that way, then turn to 467. To turn left and go deeper into the crypt, then turn to 805.
All right, Peter, you are up. What are we doing?
Let's try and get out of here with our 1 effort remaining.
Seems like a prudent move. You're in no mood to chance whatever's deeper in the catacombs, so you sneak out the way you came. The few guards that are loitering around near the main entrance aren't exactly the sharpest tools in the shed, and you have no difficulty slinking past them and up the stairs out the barrow. You leave the graveyard without incident, but you're not so lucky with the shamblers infesting the dirt path back to the main road. They spot you coming in the wan moonlight, and a trio lurch out of the dead trees lining the weed-choked thoroughfare, moaning in hunger for your living flesh.
Brains.
You must battle your way through. Treat this as a multiple hassle against a bitey shambler, a grabby shambler, and a decrepit shambler. Shamblers might be slow, but they can easily back a panicking opponent into a corner. Each time you lose a round against any of these 3, lose 1 elan for the remainder of this page. We do have the option to just be defeated by the shamblers, or we can fight them. Yeah, it actually won't be possible to win against any of these 3 hassles without spending effort, and we cannot actually spend effort.
So I guess that, Anita, you're up.
Yeah, we just need to take the beating, don't we? We just need to take the beating, I think.
Okay, so we don't fight, and we let 3 shamblers just do whatever they want to us. Because we didn't fight them, we didn't lose in any rounds against them, and we didn't lose any elan. So our elan is 9. So we need to find out what happens next, we need to roll 2 dice. They come up a 4, and the text says, you give the shamblers the slip and emerge from the battle mercifully unbitten. Following the path back slightly faster than your normal slow amble, you leave the shamblers in your dust. Stepping at last onto the paved Counts Road, you continue hiking towards Bilgeton, still several days' walk to the east. Turn to 1802. Somehow we survived that. Which I did not expect. You spend a long time walking along the road to Bilgeton. There are plenty of travelers, though none of them are particularly helpful. They certainly don't want to offer you a lift, or food, or company. In short, over the next couple of days, you become very tired of the sight of trees, paving stones, and smug-looking humans in carriages and wagons. Still, you get a bit of a rest, even if the thought of Jeff sleeping in a warm, comfortable bed while you make do with grass next to monster-infested forests drives you nearly insane.
Fucking Jeff!
Fucking Jeff!
That guy! Fuck that guy!
Jeff, we'll show
Fucking
him.
Jeff, piece of shit!
Son of a bitch. You wake unbearably early in the morning, covered in dew. Restore 20 effort and remove the temporary effects of any potion or alcohol that might be afflicting you. Our effort is now 21, so not as much on the brink of death. Late in the evening, you spy a small group of elves in ragged clothing huddled by the side of the road. Spotting you, the leader stands and hurries over to you. He implores you to help. The eponymous warlock of the nearby Warlock Tower has been harassing the honest-working elfin folk of the region with his skeleton hordes, and as a result, these elves haven't gotten so much as a jot of whimsy flicking done in weeks. The elf leader offers you a surprise magical treasure as a reward, in addition to whatever you can loot from Warlock Tower, if you'll take care of the spellcaster for them. Do you offer to assist your half-brethren in their hour of need? If so, turn to 120. Alternatively, if you're pretty sure this is just a greasy elf scam that you want no part of, then turn to 173.
All right, Silvers, you are up. What are we doing?
I don't think I want to have anything to do with their greasy elf scam.
Yeah, fucking, you can't trust them elves.
You're wise in the ways of elf kind. These jerks are going to send you off to do something insanely dangerous, and should you succeed, you'll get nothing more than a handful of pine cones and a half-remembered quote from some elfin self-help guru masquerading as timeless elfish wisdom. Hell, you used to do that to human travelers all the time, and you're only a half-elf. Instead of subjecting yourself to any more of this abuse, you simply punch the elf leader on the nose and barge on past. Unfortunately, your punch isn't as strong as your aim, and the elf quickly recovers. Seizing a convenient tree branch, he clobbers you across the back, knocking you to the ground hard. Since the branch was rotten, it doesn't harm you too badly, and after some flailing and gasping on the ground, you leap to your feet, only to find yourself confronted by half a dozen very cranky elves.
You've got a lot of balls treating us with so little respect, half-elf.
Sneers the leader.
Time to teach you some manners. Your human parent failed to teach you because he or she is human and therefore crude and unmanly and unlike the noble elf.
We now have a hassle against a bunch of elves. Difficulty is 6. They have 1 fist, and they have a toughness of 5. So we have 5 rounds that we'll have to beat them in.
Spanky, you're up to decide how we handle this this hassle.
However, it says, the burn is over-elaborate and very weak, but the elves' fists are hard enough. If you want to surrender to your brethren, then turn to 639. If you're still fighting after 3 rounds, turn to 1212. So our choices are between giving up or fighting them.
So I think I'm going to give up. I don't think we're going to beat them.
There are 6 of them, so that seems like a wise and very in-character move for the bastard elf. The elves, having beaten you into submission, do the usual elf thing and rob you blind. You manage to keep a single item hidden from them, but they take everything else, even your shoes. Remove all but one item of your choice from your adventure scroll and all of your cash. You could instead protect your cash, in which case, remove all of your items instead. Who's our next player?
That'll be Sammy. Sammy, what are we doing? What are we keeping? What was hidden?
These are all of the items that we currently have.
Okay, I would... Let's keep the 10-foot dungeoneering pole.
Okay. They take our knightly shield, which saved us, but also cost us a lot of effort. Our steel plate, our magical pick, our crowing club, our pixie bits, and everything else, and our cash.
Sorry.
Utterly humiliated, and with the laughter of the elves ringing in your ears, you resume this benighted journey. You move away at a safe distance, putting that miserable scene behind you. If you agreed to help the elves for whatever reason, then you can go seek them out. Turn to 879, which we absolutely did not. If you took a more hostile tack in dealing with them or don't see the point in hanging out with those losers again, you can leave them to their fate and continue back on the road toward Bilgeton. A bit further along the road, you see a wagon parked up with a few skeezy-looking guys seated on logs nearby. As you approach, you see that they're humans, two helmeted guardsmen wearing slightly different uniforms from one another, and a third fellow, bareheaded, aside from a pompadour and dressed in a hodgepodge of silk fabrics. A long sword hangs from his belt, the tip of its handsome leather scabbard almost touching the ground. It is this fellow who spots you and rushes out into the road, waving to get your attention. These people immediately strike you as pretty seamy, even for humans. If you're on horseback or birdback or whatever, you can try to ride on by. And we have no mount. If you're on foot and want nothing to do with these guys, then turn to 423. If you want to approach the human and see what he wants, then turn to 178.
Okay. P, you are up. What are we doing? Are we approaching these humans, or are we saying, fuck these guys?
Let's approach. Let's see what happens.
And we are approaching the end of the show, so this next paragraph is fortunately going to be our last, but on 423, let's see what happens. You stop to see what the colorfully attired man wants. Seeing that he's got your attention, he introduces himself.
Good day, gentle traveler. I am Sergeant Sabat. Pleased to make your acquaintance,
He says, bowing deeply with a flourish of his silken sleeves.
Allow me to introduce you to my compatriots, Gawain of Broonfield and Magold of Blyton.
With this, he gestures towards the two surly-looking guardsmen. They sneer at you unpleasantly as they lean on their wagon.
You seem like the adventuring type. Care to sample our wares? The finest military surplus from all over Nantes.
The bearded guard, who your interlocutor described as Gawain, pulls a cloth back from the wagon, revealing a pile of weapons, armor, and clothes. Manigold stares at you intently, his hand moving to the hilt of his short sword. Our choices are to mosey on over for a look, or if you don't want to haggle over human garbage, then turn to 423 to move along. Unfortunately, this is the end of our 2-hour show. We could literally be playing this game for days, and we might continue it in subsequent episodes. But for now, we decided to cap this at 2 hours, and this is where our adventure is, we'll say, paused.
To be continued.
All right, you can follow me, Phantom Watson, on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube for updates and information about future additional Sword of the Bastard Elf virtual shows. Just go to phantomwatson.com for all of those links. Visit twofistedfantasy.com for your own copy of the Sword of the Bastard Elf, which you can use to read through it and enjoy it for untold hours and days, or as I said before, you can leave it on your nightstand in case you ever need to brain a burglar. Check out sammy.studio to see Sam's other work that she's been working on.
Oh,
she's available for commission, for drawing work, and just check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff on Sammy.studio, including I think I heard 25 episodes of her podcast. Also, look up Dad Bod Improv and The Lazy Knights of Felt on Facebook to see more comedy by Aaron Beasley. And before we go, Sammy, what'd you think of this? Did this work as a performance thing?
Oh, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I'd sort of forgotten what I'd written, so it was really good to hear it read out.
I'm not sure how you could keep all of this in your brain, so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of it has been forgotten. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to thank my co-host, Aaron. I'd like to thank all of you who came and joined us. And that is it. That's our show.
All right. Yeah. Keep on the Facebook, social medias, and hopefully we'll announce the next either continuation or maybe a redo. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
I was thinking if we do another episode, I would let all of the players who are present vote on whether we restart at the beginning or start from where we left off. I'm going to be editing together a video of tonight and putting it online so people can perhaps review the adventure up until now. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. That's going to be on my YouTube page. Thanks everybody for coming and letting us try out this weird idea, and it apparently worked. This was fun.
Good night, guys.
Night, everybody.
Okay.